Oof. So it's been a long week, but we're finally at the end of Royal Ascot. Day 5 tomorrow, of course, the final day, and the final Timeform expert to join me on Facebook Live is Mr. Ben Fearnley.
Hello.
How are you?
Not bad, thanks. Yeah, obviously we're doing this the afternoon before, so some prices might change and there might be non-runners and things like that. So just bear that in mind if you're watching this. Hopefully there won't be too many changes to what we're about to go through.
I'm sure we've stolen every single view that was on ITV Racing has flocked to Facebook to watch us. So we'll jump straight into it, and it's the listed Chesham Stakes, the first race. Of course, won last year by Churchill, and there's a well-regarded stablemate called September in here at 5-4. What's the verdict with this one?
Yeah, I mean, she tops the ratings here, and I mean, I can see why she's going to be a very short price, because she absolutely bolted up on her debut last time, and I think the significant thing is that Aidan O'Brien's had 25 two-year-old debutants run so far this season, and he's only had one winner, and that was September. They often do improve for a run, obviously varying depending on size. I think Galileo's can improve a bit more than other size. I'm not really sure about deep impacts, but at the same time, you know, the O'Brien yard, they don't overface them first time out, and she was really impressive when she won at Leopardstown. So based on that alone, you know, you're going to look at her and think she's going to be pretty hard to beat, to be honest. Given the nature of the race, there's any number of unexposed 2-year-olds in there. You've got the likes of Westerland, who won quite a good looking maiden at Leicester, I thought, a couple of weeks ago. And you've got Matchmaker, who was third that day to Westerland, and Haig Gammon was second that day. So you've got the 1, 2, 3 from that race. I think Matchmaker could be the one at the prices out of those three that I would be with. I think he's 25-1. Haig Gammon and Westerland are both shorter, but he looked like he would really improve. He was still very green. He was expensive breeze at purchase, 180 grand. Quite recently, Simon Crisford trained, and I think if you're looking for an angle in each way, I wouldn't put you off Matchmaker, because I think that he did look a nice sort, and he was very green that day, and he still ran at a really promising debut.
So that be each way as opposed to a win?
Yeah, I'd if I was going to have a play in the race myself, I'd say Matchmaker each way, but it would only be a speculative bet given the nature of the race, and September looks like she'll take a lot of beating, really. If she builds on that debut, then she's going to take a lot of beating.
So a 25-1 shot each way in the first, and another each way fancy in the second, the notoriously difficult Wolferton Handicap.
Yeah. Now, my angle with this one is that 2 of the last three renewals have been won by class horses dropping in grade back into handicaps. So I've obviously had Sir Isaac Newton last year, who was making his handicap debut in this race. I can see why you'd want to be with Care Art, I really do, because he was very impressive last time at Chester, but he is up. I think he's up 13 pounds in the weights. He's in a much better race. It wasn't much of a race that day. It was only 7 runners in there. Didn't look particularly competitive, whereas this is a lot more so. And I think he's entitled to be favourite, but I wouldn't be opposed to taking him on. And I quite like the one in the same colours with the black cap, Muntazar, who he's been a bit frustrating. He's not been he's not been the most straightforward to train. Obviously, he only had 2 starts as a 3-year-old last season. But he did run well in the Gordon Richards Stakes at Sandown, behind Ulysses, who obviously ran a good third, the Prince of Wales is. And Deauville was in there as well in second, so that form's already been quite well advertised this week. I just think that he's worth another chance in this sort of race. I think this is his trip. He ran over a mile and a half last time at Ascot in a listed race, and I don't think that is his trip. He travels a bit too freely and a bit too well for a mile and a half, even though he's bred to stay a mile and a half, and it's certainly on his damn side. But I'd give him a chance. He's about between 16 and 20-1. I mean, Central Square is the Roger Varian runner. He caught the eye last time, and he's another with a good chance. But I just thought that Muntazar was the one that looked a bit overpriced, at around 20-1 if you can get it.
Okay, so Muntazar at 20s in the Wolferton, and into the Hardwick now, the third race of the day, where we've got Dartmouth at the top of the market, 2-1 favourite, won this last year, of course, but quite a few interesting ones in opposition.
There are, yeah. Obviously beat Highland Reel last year in this in a really good finish, Dartmouth, and on that form you'd have to say that he is the one to beat here, and you can see why he's favourite. I personally wouldn't be backing him at that sort of price. Like you say, there are a number of fairly interesting contenders. I think Idaho is probably the most interesting of those. He placed in 2 derbies last year. He, of course, stumbled and unseated in the Ledger, didn't he, when he was odds on. Things didn't really go his way when he went abroad. He went over to North America, and then he ran quite an eye-catching race behind Highland Reed in the Coronation Cup at Epsom. He wasn't given a hard time. He was quite eye-catching really, with a view to the future. This is obviously a drop in grade back to Group 2 level, and he's 6-1 shot, I think. I mean, if I was playing the race, I would probably look to back him over Dartmouth. Not that I've got anything particularly against Dartmouth. It's just a price thing really, and obviously Sir Michael Stout's horse has been running well, but they haven't been winning this week, have they? At the moment,
still chasing that record, isn't he, I believe?
Yeah. And obviously Crystal Ocean beaten earlier. He's had a few that have, they're maybe not quite done the business at short prices. I'm not saying they're running badly, because they're not. They are running, they're running the races, but there have been a few notable ones that have been turned over short prices. The other one that I would mention is Dal Harald, who was really, really progressive last season. He's done nothing but progress since he was started out as a 3-year-old, and I think he could be overpriced. I think his odds have contracted a bit since I looked at it, but I mean 16 to 20 to 1 about him is too big as well for an each way price. He stayed on strongly last time to win a listed race at York. He looks a type that will be effective at this sort of group level. He's already achieved enough to make him competitive in a Group 2 like this. So he could place Dal Harald for William Haggis, but I expect it to be between Idaho and Dartmouth really. And I think Idaho at the prices.
Okay, so into the race of the day tomorrow, the Diamond Jubilee Stakes, the final Group 1 of the week, and it's wide open. This Lamato 3-1 favourite. What's the angle with this?
Well, it's not my sort of race necessarily for betting purposes, more be a watch really, but Lamato is obviously top rated. He's £3 clear with Timeform, based on some of his very strong form from last season. Obviously his win in the July Cup was very good, and he's entitled to be favourite on that, I guess. I think the Tin Man could be the one that double the price of Lamato. He's probably a little bit big. He wasn't particularly brilliant on his return at York, but he did shape as if he'd need the run. He travelled into things well and wasn't given a hard time. He's another that progressed all through last season, and he ended up winning that Champion Sprint Stakes with a career best, and he just looks the sort of horse that's going to keep on improving really. I did like Le Brise a Breeze. I'm not sure about him coming into this fresh, though. That put me off him a bit, because last season he looked all the part of a Group 1 sprinter, the way he was finishing his races in high-end handicaps, and he ran in the Champion Sprint as well. He ran a 5th in that, I think, but he wasn't really ideally positioned. I can see him making up into a Group 1 contender this year, but I would prefer him to have a run really. So I think the Tin Man would be my idea of a bet if I was having a bet in the race, just over Lamato. Lamato is obviously, he's a class horse, but he's got a tiny bit to prove really. I know it was soft ground last time, but then he's now run 2 below par races in a row, and you're expected to back him at 5-2. Just looks a little bit short for me. So I'd probably chance a Tin Man, but Lamato, on the face of it, on his best form, if he comes back to that July Cup sort of form, then he will win this.
Okay, so 2 to go. The Wokingham at 5 o'clock. The notoriously difficult Wokingham. An 8-1 favourite here. Pun enthusiast will have a field day if Outback Traveller wins. I say that, but I can't think of one. But anyway, where would you go in this? You've got a next best, haven't you?
Yeah, I mean, I do quite like the chances of Squats in this race, trained by William Haggis. Now, he was banging his head against the wall in good 7 furlong races last season, and he finished behind Le Brise a Breeze a couple of times. He finished second to him on one occasion at this track, and then finished third again, where he probably should have finished second under a bit of a better ride. He's not raced at 6 furlongs since his 3-year-old season, but this wouldn't be off-putting coming back to this trip for me. I think he'll be fine in a strongly run 6 furlongs, and he loves Ascot. I don't particularly think there's that there's not a horse in here that I look at and go, that's really well handicapped. And I can just see the likes of Squats, who's a very solid horse. He runs his race when he gets into these scenarios. I can see him getting into the places. I'm not entirely convinced he'll win, but at 20 to 1 or so, whatever he is now, around that price, I think he's a very fair each way bet to get into the places, really. Obviously, we've got, like you say, last year's winners at the head of the market, but he's £4 higher now in the weights. So, it gives you a bit of a flavour of the race for me, in that there's nothing massively unexposed. I guess Projection is the one that is a bit unexposed, and that again is near the head of the market. But he's been quite hard to train. He only had 3 starts last season, possibly had some problems. So although I wouldn't put you off backing him necessarily either for Roger Charlton, he does offer something else in terms of his profile. But I just thought Squats was a very solid each way horse in here.
So Squats each way, but might win at a stretch.
Yeah, exactly.
It's the best I could do. One to go. We've closed it with the Queen Alexandra, and with a winner from Tuesday in here, Willie Mullins sends Thomas Hobson to try and get a quick fire double at the Royal Meeting. Is he the one to beat?
I'd say so. Yeah, it's a fairly interesting race this for the inclusion of US Army Ranger, who was finishing second in a derby this time last year. Ran to 123, I think, on the Timeform ratings. So that form is by far and away the best form in the race. But it's just what he's done since, really. That was only his 3rd start, and it was only a couple of months after he'd made his debut. So you'd have thought at that stage he had the world at his feet, US Army Ranger, after finishing second in that derby. But for whatever reason, he's not really gone on from that. He's yet to get near that level, certainly in Timeform ratings, to run to that level since. And he was very disappointed at Epsom last time. He just didn't really look that keen. It was a bit of a moody display. So although he's by far and away the best horse in the race on what he's achieved last season, it's hard to really back him. I know he'll definitely have his supporters, because he's a horse that is a classy animal in a field where there's not a great deal of class. But I would be on Thomas Hobson here, even though he's favourite. I think that he was so good the other day in the Ascot Stakes. Obviously, Simenon did this double, the same double he's attempting to do in 2012 for Willie Mullins. And if anything, Thomas Hobson won the Ascot Stakes in more impressive fashion than Simenon. They both won by 6 lengths. But the way that Thomas Hobson won that race was just unbelievable, really. It's probably the standout, most impressive, just based on the way he swept to the front of the week so far, performance-wise. And he didn't have a hard race at all. Like I said, this isn't a deep field. You've got a lot of just handicappers, really, that are chancing their arm in what is a very unique contest. I think if US Army Ranger suddenly bounces back to form, then fair enough. But I think Thomas Hobson's a solid bet with the doubts about US Army Ranger.
Okay, so Thomas Hobson, that's your nap as well, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's a day where I'm not particularly solid on anything in the other races. This race is a bit of a quirky job, isn't it, really? But I think he was so impressive that he could make 3 to 1 look quite big. It's one of those races, it's a massive field. You might get tempted into backing something else, but on the face of it, there's a lot of horses that probably aren't up to winning this. They're just having a run. It's obviously a strange race. You've got a lot of jumps trainers and things like that running horses in here. But I think the way he won, if he runs near that level, then Thomas Hobson should be hard to beat in that last race.
Smashing. Well, thank you very much for that. I'm going to run around the other side and turn off the camera, so just look busy.